2199. We were talking about the, the question, why is it that the karbonis, though it has like other mitzvahs, there's the machshava, dibur aspect of karbonis, there's tefillah, there's tefillah b'makom karbonis tiknum, there's the limud Torah of karbonis, which is the dibur and the machshava of karbonis. But when it comes to action, to maisa, which is hinted in the second time that it says Va'amarta, it says twice Va'amarta in the pasuk. Savas meisro Va'amarta, Aleihem, then again Va'amarta Lamzeisha. So the first time it says Va'amarta is going on the machshav v'dibur of the karbonis. The second time it says Va'amarta is going on the action of the performance of the actual maisa of the carbon, doing and bringing the carbon agashmi in the Beis Hamikdash. So the question is, why does this? Why is this limited only to the Beis Hamikdash, that the action of the karbonis is only shaykh in the times of the Beis Hamikdash? Even though in the times of the Beis Hamikdash it wasn't just action, there was all three things. There was the kavana, there was the kainim, the levim, the Israelim, they were all involved in the karbonis of the karbonis and so on. And still in all, then we had all aspects. We have machshava dibur and maisa. So today also, why we only limited to machshava and dibur, and not to the level of the action of the karbonis. So he started explaining that when it comes to karbonis, we see a very interesting thing. That it says reich nichaychi, it's a reich nichaych la'avayim. It's a level that taps into the level of Hashem's tainu. The action, the physical action down here, connects with Hashem's tainu, and not just nachas ruach in general, which is tainu, but even more so, nachas ruach lefonai. Nachas ruach lefonai, she'amarta v'nasir etzayni, that's talking about the pnimius, that it taps into the pnimius of the Eibishter. And that is the level that is reached in the avodas hakarbonis. So in the avodas hakarbonis, because it reaches such a high level, that high level is reached specifically through Asiya, and it's nimshach in Asiya, because the higher something is, the lower it comes down. And the truth is that all mitzvahs and gashmias also affect this type of level of the joining of the higher into the lower. But there is a difference between the way it's in all mitzvahs and all the other and karbonis. Because we started saying yesterday, because it's not just enough that a lakus should be nimshach down here, but also it has to come down in a way that the home, it should be a dirla yizbarach, should be in a revealed way, that it should be manifest and reveal that aspect, that you have this gilui oir, this high taidug, and this connection of the gashmi with the Eibishter. So we're holding in the second paragraph on the second page, 2199, we're holding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the end of the second paragraph, the last word on the line. And he says that this union, this connection, and this revelation of godliness of Alakus in the physical is to be found in a revealed way in the karbonis. So he says, how is that? This idea that the dira b'tachtoin was in a revealed way, was specifically recognizable through the karbonis. Chazal say, though a fire descends from heaven, mitzvah lahavim in a head, it's a mitzvah to bring from the regular, it's a mitzvah to bring from the person the fire. In other words, we could say, fire comes down in Hashemayim. What do I have to light a fire? He says, no, the person has to light the fire as well. What does this show? In the karbonis it was openly recognized that the fire from the ordinary, from the simple, from the person down here, brings down from above the fire from heaven. That in that fire from heaven is visible godliness in a revealed way. So we see one aspect where the Dira B'Tachtoinim, the revelation from above that comes through the Avodas Hamata, is revealed. That a fire came down in Hashemayim. You don't have that by mitzvahs, and as we'll point out by other mitzvahs, begashmis. Another thing is in there's the idea of the joining of Yidden and the Eibishter that's through the carbon. For this it also says Savas B'nai Yisrael. It says twice Ve'amarta. You shall say to them, you shall say to them. So why does it start off with Savas B'nai Yisrael? Loshen Tzavsa V'chipur. That was from the expression of together and joining. Hayagamkin Begoli. It was also in a revealed way that Sav, the joining, the union, was in a revealed way. That's why there's an emphasis on Savas B'nai Yisrael, on the idea that the Yidden are joined with the Eibishter, because that was also manifest Begoli by the Avodas HaKarbanos. So the Rebbe is going to go on to contrast the Avodah of Karbanos versus all the other mitzvahs. That's the novelty and uniqueness of the Avodah of Karbanos over all other mitzvahs. For example, the mitzvah of tzitzis. We know that tzitzis is not just limited to the physical world. Tzitzis is not just about doing a mitzvah down here, but rather in the Afshat Talus Uprisa the Malka V'chulum. The talus is called the cloak and the garment of the king. So when I'm wrapping myself up in the talus and I'm wearing the tzitzis, it's not just down here I'm doing a physical action of the talus, but it's kaviyachol that I am now dressed in the spiritual aspect, in the garment of the king. I have now a revelation of the garment of the king within my talus. Since that is the case, so we have also seemingly a joining between the spiritual and the physical, seemingly the same like by the Karbanos. But Mikol Malkum still in all, Nikr Begoli Idea Levishas Hatalis, it's not recognizable in a revealed way. Through wearing and donning the talus, the union of the person with the Eibishter. Another person looking at this person, or even the person himself, all he knows, all he sees, all he most probably feels, and normally, is just the physical talus that's sitting on his head and on his shoulders, and it's hanging, etc., etc. There's no revelation that's coming from above that's visible and recognizable to the naked eye. Well, that is a mitzvah tefillin, similar to that in the mitzvah of tefillin. Though when he places tefillin on his arm, facing the heart, and he places it on the head, in the place where a baby's skull is still soft. In other words, that it hasn't yet fused together like it happens sometime after birth, but initially there's a soft spot on the baby's head. And they pass, that's the location where the person has to place the head film. Why is that placed on the head, Keneged Moyach, corresponding to the brain? And it's not just that he places it corresponding to the place of the heart, towards the heart and towards the brain, but it has an inner content as well. The heart and brain has an inner message. And also, he consciously has to subjugate and sublimate his heart and his brain to the service of the Eibishter. Then the Rebbe adds in the parentheses that it's not just, some spiritual kavanah that if a person wants, he can have. If not, it doesn't work that way. It is like it's brought down the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Part of the mitzvah of tefillin is that when the person puts on tefillin, he should have in mind and be aware of this idea that the heart has to be sublimated to the Eibishter and the mind has to be used for the Eibishter, etc., etc. So therefore, there is this type of union that's taking place between the person and the Eibishter when he's putting on tefillin, because he's joining not just his body, not just his heart and the physical heart and the physical brain, but his inner heart and his inner mind, his emotions, his thoughts, his intellect. He is all sublimating them to the Hashem. He's connecting them to the Eibishter. Yet, despite all of that, it's not recognizable openly, the union and the joining between the person and Hashem. So too, it's in all other mitzvahs. The Torah film, like we know that all the entire Torah was compared to tefillin. So therefore, all the Torah has this aspect that internally it's about a union between the person and Hashem. But again, on the other hand, externally, it's not something that's visible and recognizable. As opposed to the karbonis role, begoli they saw in a revealed way. They saw that the kindling of the fire on the Mizbeach, that drew down the fire of above. So they saw this union. They saw not just that the fire came down from above, so they saw a revelation of godliness, but they saw the impact. They saw that what they did connected with the Eibishter, that there was a union, a tzav, a sachtus. My actions affect above. On to the third page of the Maimer, 2200. Here, the Maimer is going to get to the question that he asked initially, but this will be understood why the Karbonis was specifically both in the times of the Beis HaMikdash and also in the Beis HaMikdash itself. It's like 2 points over here. There's a lot of mitzvahs that take place during the time of the Beis HaMikdash, but they're not limited to being in the Beis HaMikdash. Here we have both. Not only does it have to be in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, but the location is also in the Beis HaMikdash. So the question, so again, he's going to even continue and elaborating on the question until he comes to the answer. The Lechura, seemingly, we said before that the highest level comes down specifically through the lowest level and in the lowest level. So therefore, the delight and the tainuk and the pnimius tainuk that is something that is derived and comes about through down here below. Look at now, like we said before, the higher something is, it comes down to to the lowest place specifically. If so, in Cain, if so, the time of Golus and the place of Chutz La'aretz is both in time and in place the lowest itself, the most bottom area. As we know, just like we have a dir b'tachtonim in a level that's tachton in place, which is the physical world, there's also a level of tachton in time. What's tachton in time? The time of Golus. And tachton in place in this world itself is the place outside of Chutz La'aretz, and definitely the place outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Ubegolus, the Atzmai, and in Golus itself, if you want to go even further to a low place, who be Yosef, the Ikus of the Mashiach is even more so during the heels of Mashiach. That's called the heels of Mashiach, Bechinas Akvayim, because it's a level that's as low as the heels. The idea of the heel is that it's the lowest part in the leg itself. The leg in general is low in comparison to the head, and the heel is even low in comparison to the leg. That's like the heels of Mashiach's times, the end of Mashiach's time, the heels of Mashiach's times, the end of Golus in comparison to the rest of the time of Golus, which the whole time of Golus may be compared to the leg. And nowadays in Golus, right before Mashiach comes, is in the leg itself, the lower place, the heels. So therefore, seemingly, we should be tapping in to this delight as well, because it's the lowest place, and the lowest place connects to the highest place. In Cain, so he repeats again the question, why is the idea of karbonis not to be found in the time of exile and Chutz La'aretz outside of Eretz Yisrael? I'm now moving, but according to what we said before, it's understood. Since in karbonis, the union with godliness is in the ultimate revelation, even more so than the rest of mitzvahs. Therefore, we have to offer them only in such a place and only in such a time that it's ready for it, and it's in the most perfect way. In other words, you want to have over here the union of godliness in a revealed way. So since you want to have the revealed union of godliness down here, in the ultimate union, so the world has to be a kelim. The world has to be ra'ui for it. So therefore, as opposed to the time of exile, that's a time of concealment, as a makim la'kravis karbanos begashmi. So then there is no place and no room to say that there should be the physical karbanos in the physical world, being that in the physical world we're not going to have the core difference that karbanos is from all other mitzvahs. All the uniqueness of karbanos is this open revelation of godliness, this open union with godliness. That open union with godliness is not possible to be manifested. It's not possible to be revealed in a place outside of the base of English. Any questions?
Yeah. What was actually seen on the Mizbeach that was so apparent?
The fire that came down in Shemayim. Once we lit the fire down here, once the Kohanim lit the fire, so then a fire came down from heaven to consume the korbanos.
So somebody around that area would see this fire coming down from the sky?
Yes, it seems to be. It was visible. That's what comes out. Now, I don't know if it was visible only to those standing in the base of Mikdash, or what they see from people outside the base of Mikdash. In other words, when you say that something comes down in Shemayim, it doesn't have to mean that as far as your eye can see, you see all the way up to outer space that the fire is coming down. It could be just that those that are standing in the base of Mikdash all of a sudden see a fire appear above the carbon and consume the carbon. So not necessarily outside of the base of Mikdash, outside of the Azara, outside of the courtyard that anybody saw it. But the point is that those that were there, it was visible to them and revealed to them. Not like, for example, by film where you don't actually see the union of your heart, let's say your emotions with Hashem, or you don't actually see how Hashem wraps you in his cloak when you're wearing the towels.
Hello, I have a comment.
Yes.
It looks a little bit childish. If you can't have it perfect, you don't do it at all. And we see, like, for example, in tzitzis, we don't know what's the tchelet, but we still do a tzitzit.
So, l'chura, the point is like this. The point is, first of all, that certain things, their purpose was this particular thing. It comes out like the actions of the karbonis, the mice of the karbonis, its purpose was that type of revelation. So if it's missing that type of union and that type of revelation, so then that aspect of the karbonis is taken out, the action aspect of the karbonis is taken out. Though, like we said before, we do have the machshav and the dibur of the karbonis. We have the tefillas and karbonis tiknum. We have the learning of the halachas of oila, kol leimatoris oila, kila ikra oila. But the point, it seems to be, this is what I would say in answer to your question, that karbonis's purpose was that manifestation of godliness of Elokus in a revealed way. So if there was not the manifestation, so then it didn't serve that purpose of what the karbonos were about. So that aspect, that component of the karbonos, the action of the karbonos, was removed. That's the way I understand what it's saying.
Okay.
Okay, let's go on further. Second paragraph on the second page, on the third page of the Maimer, 2200. So he says, that's what it says over here twice. Moving for this understood. There are two components. The Indian Vamarta, Aleph, the Koyal Machshav, the Dibur Karbonis, the first Vamarta, it's going on the thought and speech of the Karbonis, like we mentioned before, from the Torah. The thought of Karbonis and the speech of Karbonis is applicable in every place and every time. That's why it says differently, separately. In other words, like this. We said that all mitzvahs, there's the machshava part of mitzvah, for example, the kavanah that a person has by the mitzvah. There is the dibur aspect of the mitzvahs. We said, what's the speech aspect? Making a bracha. And then there's the action of the mitzvah. Yet we don't find that the Torah will divide it and say, let's say, by every mitzvah, Amarta, Vamarta. Because in every mitzvah, it's not completely different and distinct, because the machshava, the dibur, and the ma'isa are applicable all over in any place and any time. But in Karbonis, where the action is its own different thing, that's only applicable in a certain place and time, whereas the thought and speech is applicable every time, so the Torah divides it. First he says, Ve'amarta, the first time it says Ve'amarta, that's talking about the thought and the speech of the Karbonis. Then, which is applicable everywhere. And afterwards, so then another specific matter is said concerning the Karbonis. That's the second time Ve'amarta is referring to the level of action. That in that is recognized and revealed and recognized the union with the Eibishter. When it comes to the recognition and revelation, the open union with the Eibishter, that is tzarich is dafke b'makim uzman b'shleimus b'beis hamikdash. That has to be specifically in the perfect time and the perfect place in the Beis Hamikdash. In other Amorim, it says that that will do it. It's referring to will do the mitzvahs as your will. That's going to be in the time to the Beis Hamikdash, and also the Beis Hamikdash is the place where Yerah kol zechorcha and kishem sheba lerois kachba lerois. That the whole idea of the Beis Hamikdash is revelation of godliness. So therefore, the Karbonis, the action of the Karbonis, which their point is godly revelation in an open manner, that could only be in the location of the Beis Hamikdash, in the physical location, and in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Again, the idea of time and place is the whole time emphasized, that we are in a very low place and a very low time, being in Golus, and being in the time of Golus, and being in the place of Golus, and Chutzlarts, and so on. But the Beis Hamikdash was about godliness being revealed, and therefore that's where the actions of the Karbonos were applicable. So the Rebbe obviously does not want to leave us with like, okay, so it's very bad and that's it. The Rebbe also wants to bring out the other side of the equation as well. But on the other hand, since the time of Golus is both in time and in place, it's the lowest time and it's the lowest place, than the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Move on, it's understood. It's understood that this particular time and this particular place has the advantage of being a dira, home down here below, like we said before, the higher something is, the lower it descends. Therefore, specifically over here, could be the idea that my will has been done perfectly and completely. This is what the Chazal said. The tefillah is from Makkah. So, in other words, the Rebbe is like flipping it around. And even though he said before that it has to be the idea of a martyr and asar etzayni, I said, and my will was fulfilled, still in all. And when we talk about the nachas ruach aspect, seems to be something that's only revealed in the times of Beis Hamikdash. On the other hand, this connection of dira with tachtoinim, putting aside the level of gilui, that the rotzen, the will of Hashem, that he wanted a home down here below, since there's nothing lower than our place in our time, that's where you have the Ratzon of Hashem fulfilled. Again, not the revelation of the delight yet, but the Ratzon of Hashem is fulfilled specifically down here. This is what the Chazal said. The tefillos were makom tamidim tiknun, that the tefillos were established in the place of the Karban Tamid, or like we said earlier in the Maimer, on the place of the Karbonis in general. This means to say, it's possible to complete and to make up for the Karbonis also in the time of Golus. Like it says, that the oxen, the bullocks that we were bringing the base of Mikdash will be completed, will be fulfilled by Svaseinu, by our lips. The machshav v'dibur, through thought and speech. The inyan dibur koilo loirak inyan birchas mitzvahs kanal. The idea of speech includes not just the brachas of mitzvahs, like we said before, that in every mitzvah there's the thought, speech, and deed, and the speech of the mitzvah is the bracha you make before the mitzvah. Alagam limud hilchas mitzvahs. It also includes the studying of the halachas of the mitzvahs. That's also the speech of every mitzvah. As the Chazal say, the whoever is involved in the Torah of the Karban Olam, it's as if he offered a Karban Olam. So therefore, we see how powerful the speech of the mitzvah of Karbanis is, to such a degree that's considered that he actually did it. By the way, in other places, in other sikhs, the Rebbe explains the powerful statement that means, and in a similar vein, and even more so, that by learning the Torah of the Beis HaMikdash, which the Rebbe always encourages to learn, Hilchos Beis HaBchira, and the Masechtas Midas and Yecheskel during the 3 weeks. So that is considered as if we're actually building the Beis HaMikdash. So he goes on further. K'moishu being adibur sheva mitzvahs, she'ein aleim birchas hamitzvahs, k'moi mitzvahs loises. For example, chuluk mevor b'sfarim, she'inyan b'dibur b'lumin ha'Torah shalna. We said before that when it comes to the speech of the mitzvahs, all mitzvahs have machshava dibur ma'aseh. So, and what is the speech of the mitzvahs? The speech of the mitzvahs is the brachas on the mitzvahs. But not every mitzvah has a bracha. For example, all mitzvahs loises do not have a bracha on it. You do not make a bracha on a mitzvahs loises. When a person walks by Pinks on La Brea Avenue, they don't make a bracha on the fact that they're not eating treif. You don't make a bracha on a loises. Or when he wasn't Mechal Shabbos, he doesn't make a bracha that I'm not being Mechal Shabbos. So where's the speech over there? So he's saying, so what is the speech component of the mitzvahs loises? When I learn Yerdedeya, when I learn the halachas in Shulchan Aruch, when I learn Masechtas Chulin about how what's kosher and what's treif, that is the speech of the loises. When I learn Masechtas Shabbos, I learn Hilchas Shabbos, I learn the psukim in the Torah that speak about Shabbos. So then that's the speech involved in the fulfillment of the loises of Shabbos. There's also, it's not just mitzvahs loises, there's certain mitzvahs asay also doesn't have a bracha. For example, the mitzvah of tzedakah, for example, doesn't have a bracha. For whatever reason, it's a discussion in the Mefarshim why that's so. So to concerning thought, that's to be found also these days in the understanding and comprehension of the mitzvahs. In other words, as much as we can, we are supposed to delve into the mitzvahs and understand the mitzvahs. And like the Rambam says, even those mitzvahs that are a gzeira from Hashem and are not given for them a reason in the Torah, we need to delve into them and we need to think into them, etc., etc. Specifically in the time of goals. It's a low place, that there's nothing lower than it. Like it's understood from the very fact that you cannot bring the karbanos, that itself is an indication how low it is. Moving. So it's understood that there's an advantage in the idea of karbanos in thought and speech, that specifically in this place and this time. That is why specifically when doing the avodas hakarbonos now limited to thought and speech, the Maseinu, the Seinu now brings the revelation that's going to be when Mashiach comes. Why? Because we are doing it dafke in a tachton shein tachton umata imenu. So on the one hand, there's an advantage of the karbonos that we're going to do in the Beis Hamikdash because there's going to be a divine revelation. But as on the other hand, as far as tachton and accomplishing the dir b'tachtonim, it's more so now. And the Rebbe concludes with a bracha. It should be the will of Hashem. For our actions and service these days, in all these above mentioned banners, especially now, the Rebbe was bringing in the Shabbos afternoon. So before Mincha, we say in Mincha Shabbos afternoon, that I might fill it to you is an auspicious time, a time of Hashem's will being revealed. That it's the idea of the auspicious time, the time of Hashem's will. From that is Navel Gula Mitzvah Shleima. Through that will come to the true and complete redemption. That then we will do before you the carbonos of our obligations. The Beis Hamikdash in the third Beis Hamikdash. Like I mentioned before, that the carbonos will then be like the mitzvah of your will, the way the carbonos are meant to be with a godly revelation. Also, we fulfill the second Ve'amart, that we're doing it in action, not just in thought and speech. The base din, it will also be talking about for the Bezdin, like we said before, that the Rashi says Ve'amart Elohem, that the second time it says Ve'amart means to tell Bezdin. Why is it going to be fulfilled? Because it says Vashiv Shaftach, where the Shoin will return your judges like they were initially. In other words, the Eibishter will return and reestablish the Sanhedrin. Moshe and Aaron will be with them, V'chol Nesiim, and all the leaders of the Jewish people. Ad Nesi Doreinu, till the head of our generation, Shua Rosh, he is the head of Basar Gufa, Reisha Gufa Ozla. As we know, the body follows the head. We will go together to the third Beis Hamikdash, the holy mountain, Yerushalayim, the holy city, in the holy land, a land that's always upon you, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. It's eventually going to spread out in all the lands with joy and gladness of heart. Any questions?